My name is Nora Sterling, and I just turned 18. At my birthday party last night, my stepfather pulled me aside, patted my shoulder, and whispered, "When the guests leave, you're going to sign some standard estate releases for your brother Jared. Just a routine family formality." I smiled. I nodded. Then I walked upstairs to my room, opened my laptop, and quietly accepted my role as the sole director of a private heritage trust, transferring my grandmother's entire coastal estate and her lifetime collection of rare, unregistered artwork into an airtight legal fortress. The next morning, my stepfather, my mother, and my stepbrother found out that the cliffside property, the studio, the paintings, and the private archive, valued at millions, were entirely out of their reach. My stepbrother, who had already taken a massive cash advance from a corporate developer for land he didn't own, scrambled to call his partners. Before I tell you what happened when the lawyers got involved, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time in the comments below. I truly love knowing where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back 6 years to a rainy autumn at Whispering Cliffs, when my grandmother told me something I wouldn't fully comprehend until last night. The autumn I turned 12, my grandmother, Sylvia Sterling, took me by the hand and led me down the winding stone path to Windward Studio. The studio sits right on the edge of the granite cliffs overlooking the Atlantic. The building itself surrounded by ancient, wind-bent cypress trees that frame the gray ocean. Built of dark timber and local stone, the heavy oak door swollen from the sea, damp requires a firm push to open. Inside, it always smells of linseed oil, turpentine, aged canvas, and a faint, sweet scent of dried lavender that Grandma kept in small linen bags on the windowsills. "Hold the corner of this frame, Nora," Grandma Sylvia said, lifting a large, dust-covered canvas from a wooden rack. I reached out, my small hands gripping the weathered wood. We spent the afternoon organizing her early sketches, checking the corners of each canvas for signs of moisture. She didn't rush me. She showed me how to gently press a clean cotton cloth against the paint towel. Check if the protective varnish had begun to degrade. If it leaves a white residue, it needs care, she whispered. Afterward, we sat at the heavy oak work table, the one her father had built from a salvaged shipwreck in the 1940s. She poured 2 cups of hot chamomile tea. We watched the rain lash against the high glass windows until the tide began to turn. "This studio, and everything created inside these walls, belongs to the cliffs, Nora," Grandma Sylvia told me that evening, wiping a smudge of charcoal from her cheek. "But remember this, some people look at a canvas and see a story. Others look at it and see nothing but the price of the frame. Be careful of those who only know how to count." I didn't fully understand what she meant. I was 12. I thought she was just talking about art critics. She wasn't. That entire year, I spent every free weekend at Windward Studio. I learned which floorboards groaned in the winter, how to secure the storm shutters against northeastern gales, and how to catalog her oil paintings by the year of their completion. In December, she taught me how to store her journals and correspondence in zinc-lined boxes because the sea air could eat away the ink. I had no idea then that my grandmother was already quietly meeting with an estate attorney, preparing for the exact storm she knew was coming. Back at our main house in the suburbs of Oak Ridge, the atmosphere was entirely different. Our house was modern, sharp, and cold. My stepfather, Raymond Cole, ran a commercial real estate firm that was constantly expanding, though he never seemed to talk about his projects without a tense edge to his voice. My stepbrother Jared, who was 2 years older than me, had the largest room in the house, newly renovated with high-tech gear and designer furniture. My room was small, tucked away at the end of the hall, still painted the pale yellow the previous owners had chosen. At dinner, Raymond would often bring up the cliffs. "That studio is sitting on 3 acres of prime oceanfront real estate," he would say, carving his roast chicken with aggressive precision. "Sylvia is hoarding a gold mine. The land alone could fund 3 major commercial developments. It's a waste." My mother, Helen, would nod quietly, murmuring, "It is a lot of upkeep for an older woman." "Grandma says the land is protected," I murmured once from the corner of the table. Jared let out a sharp, mocking chuckle. "Protected by what, Nora? A bunch of old paper? That's not how the real world works." Nobody else spoke to me for the rest of the meal. The conversation quickly shifted to Jared's upcoming trip to Europe or his business school applications. On the kitchen island later that night, half hidden under a stack of design magazines, I saw a glossy brochure. Vanguard Shoreline Resorts, luxury cliffside living. Inside the brochure was a map of Whispering Cliffs, with a red boundary line drawn directly through my grandmother's studio. Beside the map was a handwritten note in blue ink. "Raymond, the zoning variance is approved. We just need the signature." I put the brochure back exactly as it was. I walked up to my dark room, my chest tight. I thought of the shipwrecked timber table in Grandma's studio. I realized that while Grandma was painting the light on the water, my stepfather was already calculating the cost of the bulldozer. Grandma Sylvia passed away 2 years later, when I was 14. The memorial service was held on a cold, overcast Tuesday. I sat in the second row of the chapel, clutching a small wooden paint box she had given me, smelling the faint trace of cedar oil that still lingered on the wood. At the reception, I watched Raymond and Jared standing near the entrance, speaking in hushed, urgent tones, with a man in a tailored charcoal suit. Jared had a thick black portfolio tucked under his arm. I caught a snippet of Raymond's voice as I walked past to get a glass of water. "If we file the estate administration papers before the end of the month, we can clear the zoning hurdle by spring." They were planning the demolition of her life's work at her funeral. I said nothing. I was 14. I had no legal authority, no voice, and no idea that Grandma Sylvia had already built a fortress to protect us both. 2 more years went by. I turned 16. My mother's health began to decline, and she spent most of her time resting, leaving Raymond and Jared to run the household. During this time, the studio remained locked. Raymond tried several times to get the keys from me, claiming he needed to perform a safety inspection, but I always told him I had lost them. In reality, I kept them on a leather cord around my neck, hidden beneath my clothes. Every Saturday morning, I would take the local bus out to Whispering Cliffs. I would walk the mile from the bus stop to the studio, open the heavy oak door, and spend hours sweeping the dust, checking the zinc boxes, and maintaining the oil paintings. It was my quiet sanctuary, a place where the noise of my stepfather's ambition couldn't reach me. At home, the language around the studio began to change. It was no longer Sylvia's place. Raymond and Jared began referring to it as the family asset. During one Sunday dinner, Raymond looked at me across the table. "Nora, when you turn 18, we're going to clean up the estate structure. It's much safer to have everything under the company name. We'll handle the paperwork." Grandma wanted the studio to remain a preservation space for local artists, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother sighed softly. "Nora, your grandmother was an artist, not a businesswoman. She didn't understand the financial realities we're facing now. Raymond is just trying to protect us." Protect us, I realized, was their word for liquidation. A month before my 17th birthday, while I was cleaning out the bottom drawer of Grandma's desk in the studio, my fingers brushed against a false bottom. I lifted the thin cedar panel. Hidden beneath it was a thick cream envelope, with my name written in her elegant, flowing script. Inside was a single document and a business card for an attorney named Diane Vance, with the words Sterling Heritage Trust printed at the bottom. My heart hammered against my ribs. Grandma had left this for me, knowing I would be the only one who cared enough to clean the drawers. I tucked the card deep into my wallet and kept my silence. I didn't call Diane Vance immediately. I waited, observing the movements in my house. I noticed Jared spending hours on Zoom calls in the study, talking about pre-construction sales and clearing the title. I knew they were preparing to not make a move the moment I became a legal adult. 3 months before my 18th birthday, my phone rang. It was an unrecognized number. "Nora? This is Diane Vance." A calm, measured voice said, "I was your grandmother's attorney. We need to meet before your birthday. There are steps we must take, and the timing must be precise." We met the following Saturday at her office downtown. The office was quiet, lined with dark wood shelves filled with thick legal volumes. Diane was a woman, in her late 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a reassuring presence. She sat across from me and opened a thick manila folder. "6 years ago, your grandmother realized her family would try to sell Windward Studio the moment she was gone," Diane explained, sliding a document toward me. "She established the Sterling Heritage Trust. It is an irrevocable trust. She transferred the title of the cliffside property, the studio, her entire art.archive, and a designated maintenance portfolio into it while she was alive. Legally, these assets are not part of her personal estate. They cannot be touched by probate, and your stepfather has absolutely no claim to them. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, so strong it made me dizzy. So they can't sell it? Not legally, Diane said. However, you are the designated successor director. Until you turn 18, the trust is in a holding pattern. The moment you turn 18, you must formally accept the director role. Until you sign that document, the title is vulnerable to wild deeds or fraudulent transfers by family members, claiming to be the sole heirs. She looked at me gravely. My office has detected that a title search was recently run on the property by a firm associated with your stepfather. They are preparing to file a claim of heirship, assuming there is no active opposition. If they file their paperwork before you formally accept your role, they could cloud the title, locking the property in court for years while they push through their development plans. I stared at the papers. What do we do? We wait until the exact minute you turn 18, Diane said. The moment the clock strikes midnight on your birthday, you are legally authorized to sign. I will have the digital portal ready. The moment you sign, I will file a LIS pendens and a notice of trust structure with the land registry at 8 a.m. the next morning. That will freeze any attempt they make to alter the title. Should I confront them? I asked. No, Diane advised gently. If they know you have legal representation, they will accelerate their timeline or find a way to pressure you before you reach legal age. Stay quiet. Let them believe they are in control. I drove home that afternoon with a strange, cold calm in my chest. When I walked into the kitchen, Raymond was exceptionally cheerful. Nora, we're planning a wonderful 18th birthday party for you, he said, offering a warm, artificial smile. We've invited all our business associates, our neighbors, everyone. It's going to be a big celebration. I smiled back. Thank you, Raymond. That's very kind of you. I went upstairs and shut my door. I realized the party wasn't for me. It was a stage. They wanted to surround me with people, to make me feel small and compliant, so that when they slid the routine estate papers in front of me, I would sign them just to avoid making a scene. I ask you now, have you ever had to carry a heavy secret, pretending everything was fine while you quietly built your own defense? Let me know in the comments. I read your stories, and your resilience always inspires me. If you haven't subscribed yet, please join us. The next part of the story is where the pieces finally fall into place. 5 days before my birthday, the pressure began. My mother sat me down in the sunroom, her voice soft and strained. Nora, darling, Raymond's business is facing some very difficult times. The market has shifted, and we have some significant liabilities. If we can develop the cliffside property, it will secure your college education and ensure this family stays on solid ground. But Grandma wanted the art to be preserved, I said quietly. My mother looked down, avoiding my eyes. Nora, art is a luxury. Survival is a necessity. Your stepfather has worked so hard for us. We need to support him. That evening, Jared stopped me in the hallway. He leaned against the wall, a smug grin on his face. Just so you know, Nora, the developers are already drawing up the plans. We're putting a private dock down by the cove. It's going to be incredible. You'll get a nice little trust fund out of it, so don't go getting dramatic on us. Whose name is on the land title, Jared? I asked, keeping my voice entirely neutral. His grin faltered for a fraction of a second, his eyes narrowing. It's family.land, Nora. It belongs to the estate. My dad is the executor. Don't worry about the legal details. Just be ready to sign the standard releases on your birthday so we can get this moving. I'll think about it, I said, repeating the phrase that had become my shield. He laughed, patting my shoulder. Good girl. I knew you'd see sense. The night before my birthday, I took the bus to Whispering Cliffs one last time, as a minor, I walked down the path in the dark, the wind howling off the ocean. I unlocked the heavy door, turned on the single desk lamp, and sat at my grandfather's shipwrecked timber table. The air was cold, but the smell of linseed oil and lavender made me feel incredibly warm. I opened my laptop and logged into the secure portal Diane Vance had set up. The digital documents were there, waiting for my signature at midnight. I looked around the room, at the racks of canvases containing my grandmother's soul, her views of the sea, her quiet observations of a world that didn't care about profit margins. I felt a few quiet tears slip down my face, not because I was afraid, but because I was grieving the family I wished I had. I wished my stepfather was a man who valued heritage over square footage. I wished my mother had the strength to stand up for her mother's legacy. But I knew that wishing wouldn't save this studio. Only the law would. I wiped my eyes, closed my laptop, and returned home. I set my alarm for 11:58 p.m. At 11:58 p.m., my room was dark. The house was dead silent. I sat at my desk, the glow of the laptop screen lighting my face. At exactly midnight, my clock turned to June 3rd. I was officially 18. I clicked the link. I verified my identity, uploaded the digital copy of my ID, and signed the formal acceptance of successor directorship for the Sterling Heritage Trust. I clicked submit. Within 2 minutes, an automated email arrived from Diane Vance's secure portal. Filing confirmed. Documents queued for priority registry submission at 8:00 a.m. I closed my laptop, lay back on my bed, and slept more deeply than I had in years. What my stepfather and stepbrother didn't know was that while I was signing my documents, Jared was finalizing his own plans. I later learned from Diane Vance and the registry logs that Jared had prepared a fraudulent waiver of heritage claims, which he intended to have me sign at the party, alongside a quitclaim deed that Raymond had already signed as the sole active representative of the Sterling estate. Jared had already accepted a $250,000 non-refundable earnest money deposit from Vanguard Shoreline Resorts if he couldn't deliver a clean, unencumbered title. To the developer within 30 days, the contract specified a massive default penalty, including the immediate return of the deposit plus damages. He had gambled everything on the assumption that an 18-year-old girl would do exactly what she was told. The birthday party began at 4:00 p.m. the next afternoon. The backyard was decorated with elegant white lanterns. There were caterers serving hors d'oeuvres, a live string trio playing in the corner, and about 30 guests, mostly Raymond's business partners, local politicians, and wealthy clients. My mother was dressed in her finest silk dress, smiling tightly as she greeted guests. Raymond was in his element, holding a glass of champagne, laughing loudly with a group of investors. Jared stood nearby, looking exceptionally pleased with himself. I wore a simple dark blue dress that had belonged to my grandmother. In my pocket, I carried a printed copy of the registered trust document, stamped by the State Land Registry at 8:04 a.m. that morning. Around 5:30 p.m., Raymond stepped up to the small microphone near the patio. He tapped his glass with a silver spoon, and the crowd fell silent. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Nora's 18th birthday," Raymond said, gesturing warmly toward me. "Today is a major milestone. Nora is officially an adult, and as a family, we are embarking on a magnificent new chapter. We are proud to announce that the historic Whispering Cliffs estate will soon be transformed into the premier luxury retreat on this coast, the Vanguard Cliffs Resort." The crowd applauded. Raymond looked directly at me, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Nora, we are so proud of your maturity and your commitment to this family's future. Come up here and join us." I walked slowly up the stone steps to the patio. The guests watched me, smiling, expecting a sweet, tearful thank you speech. I took the microphone from Raymond's hand. I looked at the crowd, then at my stepfather, whose smile was fixed and bright. "Thank you, everyone, for coming," I said, my voice steady and clear through the dot speakers. "But I need to clarify something. There will be no resort built on Whispering Cliffs." The silence that followed was absolute. The string trio stopped tuning their instruments, Raymond's smile frozen. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Nora, stop playing games. This isn't the time. Windward Studio and the surrounding cliffs are held in an irrevocable heritage. Trust," I continued, looking directly at the lead representative from Vanguard, Shoreline, whom I recognized from the brochure. "As of midnight last night, I have formally assumed my role as the sole director of that trust. The land is legally preserved, the title is locked, and it is not, under any circumstances, for sale." Jared pushed his way through the crowd, his face flushed red. "You don't know what you're talking about. My dad is the executor of the estate." "The estate does not own the land, Jared," I said quietly, pulling the stamped registry document from my pocket and holding it up. "The trust has held the title for 6 years. My grandmother made sure of it. If you have signed any contracts or accepted any deposits for this property, I suggest you speak with your attorneys immediately." Raymond reached for the microphone, but I stepped back, handing it to the caterer beside me. The party dissolved into absolute chaos. Guests began whispering urgently to one another. The representative from Vanguard Shoreline pulled out his phone, his face pale as he began typing frantically. Within 15 minutes, the backyard was empty. The investors and business partners slipped away without saying goodbye, leaving only my family standing under the white lanterns. Raymond slammed his champagne glass onto a metal table, shattering the stem. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" he roared, stepping toward me. "I am facing bankruptcy, Nora. That development was our lifeline. You've ruined this family." "No, Raymond," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You ruined this family when you started selling things that didn't belong to you." My mother sat on a patio chair, her face buried in her hands, weeping softly. "Nora, how could you do this to us? After everything Raymond has done for this house." "Grandma Sylvia built Windward Studio with her own hands," I told her. "She trusted me to protect it. I kept my promise." Jared was staring at his phone, his hands shaking violently. "The Vanguard Group just sent a formal notice," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They're demanding the return of the deposit by tomorrow morning, plus the breach penalty. Dad, we don't have that money. It's gone. I used it to clear my personal debts." Raymond turned on his son, his face turning an angry shade of purple. "You did. What? You told me you had the funds secured." "You told me the title was a formality," Jared screamed back. "You said she was, just a kid, and she'd sign whatever we put in front of her. I didn't stay to watch them tear each other apart. I walked out of the backyard, down the driveway, and took the bus back to Whispering Cliffs." The next morning, the legal dominoes began to fall. Diane Vance confirmed that Vanguard Shoreline Resorts had filed an immediate civil suit against both Raymond and Jared for fraud, breach of contract, and misrepresentation. Because Jared had signed a corporate warranty of title, claiming he was the authorized representative of the estate, he was personally liable for the $250,000 deposit, plus an additional $100,000 in liquidated damages. Furthermore, during the title investigation, it was discovered that the quitclaim deed Raymond had attempted to draft contained a forged signature of my late grandmother's former co-signer, an elderly neighbor who had passed away years ago. The state land registry flagged the document and referred the case to the county prosecutor's office for investigation into document forgery. Over the next month, Raymond's real estate firm collapsed under the weight of the lawsuits and the public scandal. To avoid criminal prosecution for the forgery, Raymond was forced to sell our modern suburban house and liquidate his remaining personal assets to pay back the developers and settle the civil claims. My mother, realizing the depth of the deception Raymond and Jared had engaged in, filed for divorce. She moved into a small apartment downtown, taking a job as an administrator at a local school. We speak occasionally, but the relationship is quiet, built on a long, slow road of rebuilding trust. Jared's business reputation was completely destroyed. His real estate credentials were permanently revoked, and he was forced to take a low-paying job out of state to slowly pay off the remaining debts from his failed gamble. I moved into Windward Studio. The first night I spent there, the sea breeze was strong, lashing the waves against the granite cliffs below. I sat at my grandfather's shipwreck timber table, looking at the letter Grandma Sylvia had left for me in the drawer. The last paragraph of her letter read, "Nora, the world will always try to tell you that things of beauty are only valuable if they can be sold. Do not believe them. Some things are meant to be kept, to be loved, and to be passed down to those who understand their true worth. Thank you for holding the line." I enrolled in the local university's Fine Arts Preservation Program, funded entirely by the education trust my grandmother had quietly set aside for me 6 years ago, a fund my stepfather never even knew existed. Today, the studio is thriving. I have opened its doors to local landscape painters, offering them a quiet space to work, free of charge, just as my grandmother had always wanted. The paintings remain on the walls, their colors bright, their stories preserved. I didn't win a battle against my family. There is no joy in watching the people who raised you fall apart. But I did something far more important. I kept a promise to someone who loved me enough to see the storm before it ever reached the horizon. If you are facing a storm of your own, and the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones causing the rain, I want you to remember this. You have the right to stand your ground. You have the right to protect your heritage, your peace, and your future. If this story brought you comfort, or if you've ever had to find the strength to stand up for what's right, please share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to sharing the next story with you.